Hello. While the events of the American Revolution appear in your textbook, it's also important to realize that many people in the world considered the American experiment dangerous. It could be the beginning of an epidemic. Its ideas of representative government and elected representatives, of governmental power split and balanced among three branches, judicial, legislative, and executive, designed to keep one another in check. And the legislative power itself split between two houses, one of them, the House of Representatives, a quick-moving body, up for election every other year, and therefore responsive to the mood of the mob, democratic, transitory. The other, the Senate, intended for stability. Senators serve a 6-year term, and originally, as you'll read in a few weeks, in the U.S. Constitution, they were elected not by the people, but by the state legislatures. The Senate was designed to be less democratic, more Republican, less responsive to the will of the people, more answerable to other elites. The number of representatives in the House depends on the population of each state. So it is a direct correlation with the people. But there are 2 senators for each state, period. This is a very important point. Remember this for later in the semester. In the U.S. Congress, there are 2 senators for each state. It is one of the things that increases the regional tensions that caused the Civil War. So remember that. This American form of government, a small r Republican version of democracy, was considered dangerous. The means of achieving it was even worse, a revolution against the empire that had settled the place and planted it and defended it. The colonists revolted against their mother, according to elites around the world who ruled countries and colonies of their own. The ideals of personal freedom and representative government, however inadequately applied in the first iterations of American national history, inspired others to try something like it. And so the American Revolution sparked an age of revolutions, in which American ideals spread around the world like a disease, leading to outbreaks, some familiar and some not. The French Revolution is a very famous example, of course. Its most revolutionary period took place between 1789 and 1799, though we shall see the wars in Europe over the French Revolution and its aftermath extend into the Napoleonic Wars through 1815. But this initial revolutionary period was the end of France's absolutist monarchy. The world of feudal privilege ended in a popular revolt turned violence. It was the usual story. Famine in the land, paired with massive spending by the king, led to unrest and eventually revolution. He'd been spending his cash on overseas wars while people starved at home. First, big spending on the 7 Years' War, only to see the North American Empire of France destroyed. Then, some spending, even on the American Revolution, supporting the colonists in their war against the British. This made the king massively unpopular, and he was eventually executed, as the French Revolution turned almost into a civil war. A series of assemblies and congresses attempted to rule, and peasant rebellions and urban uprisings both kept revolutionary change coming. For our purposes, the answer is, how was this like the American Revolution, and how did it differ? The French Revolution was like the American one, because it borrowed the ideal of representative government. In getting rid of the monarchy, the French attempted to install a Congress like the American Congress. The French produced a document called the Declaration of the Rights of Man, which was similar to the U.S. Declaration of Independence, and they also assembled to write a constitution. There were even some of the same people working and producing and printing ideas that played a role in both revolutions. You've heard a lot about Thomas Paine, for example, and his pamphlet Common Sense, which supported the Americans' desire for independence and individual freedom, equality among all men. In 1781, he moved to France and translated his pamphlets into French, and published The Rights of Man in 1791 and The Age of Reason in 1793. These guides to Enlightenment ideas pushed reason, rationality, free thinking, and getting rid of old institutions. These ideas were very much in line with the ideals that American founding fathers had advocated, and in France, they found a new home. But the situation was different there, too. In reality, The revolution in France overturned an absolutist monarchy rather than a distant parliament. France was not a distant colony, so its fight was more a civil war than the American scene. By 1793, the French Revolution had turned violent. The guillotine alone killed 16,594 people. The terror saw people turning against their neighbors, and the revolution gave way to counter-revolution as competing ideas of the state and of the social structure fought for primacy. So, the American and French revolutions shared similar ideas, but in reality they were very different. The ideas took root in different contexts: monarchy versus parliament, colonial independence versus social revolution. Ideas are so malleable and can be applied to so many different things. The French Revolution offers a salutary reminder that the American Revolution was dangerous to a lot of people, to existing elites and rulers and the systems they used to rule. Americans mostly reacted badly to the French Revolution. Its violence seems to have turned Americans against revolution. Despite the nation's heritage and its birth in a war for independence, a revolution against the existing empire that had given it birth. America doesn't generally respect revolutions other than our own. Here's a cartoon playing on Thomas Paine's personal history as a corset maker, showing that the French were being laced into a garment, maybe too tightly for its health. The next example from the Age of Revolutions was an outgrowth of the French Revolution, and it was both similar and different to both examples so far. 700 miles off the coast of the young United States, Haiti was a French sugar island on the island of Hispaniola. The other half of the island was a sugar-producing colony of Spain and is today the Dominican Republic. In the colonial period, the island produced 40% of the world's sugar crop. It was one of the richest colonies in the world, and one of the few still belonging to France after the disastrous 7 Years' War. Haiti had a population of about 40,000 French Haitians, and also about 500,000 African slaves. In Haiti, as on so many sugar islands, most of the enslaved population came directly from Africa. The workforce did not reproduce itself because the work was so deadly. So fresh shipments were brought regularly to work in the sugar plantations. So that means that there were 10 times as many African slaves in Haiti as there were French Haitians, Creoles who ruled the place and owned the plantations. In addition, in the 1790s, Haiti was also home to about 24,000 free blacks, so more than half as many free whites. A third of the free population was people of color. This was because the French had a habit and custom of freeing their children, so if they had children with slaves, those children were often freed. As a result, the island was home to a Creole population of color, as well as European colonists, the French Haitians, and then a very large population of African slaves. The French usually held political office, but native-born whites wanted more power. Then, in 1789, with the start of the French Revolution, political power on Haiti became uncertain. There's a revolution back in the mother country. Who rules the colonies? The rise and fall in France of so many different forms of government, different assemblies and congresses, it wasn't always clear on Haiti who was in charge. Within this situation, the free people of color from Haiti took the opportunity to push for their rights. They took the issue of their rights and their citizenship to the French National Assembly. If the government of France was turning to representative government, the rights of man and equality of all men was the ideology of the revolution at home, this was the time to push for similar ideals to be applied in the colonies. From this assembly returned Vincent Auger in October 1790. He believed that the Haitian delegation had won from the French not only the vote, but also full civil equality for free people of color. But the local government in Haiti disagreed and refused to recognize these rights. The civil unrest that this decision occasioned coincided with a massive slave revolt out on the plantations. From Paris, the French freed the slaves in 1793, but that was too late to stem the violent overthrow of political power in Haiti. A leader emerged to lead the Haitian Revolution, Toussaint Louverture, who is regarded as the George Washington of Haiti. He began by playing off France against Spain. Remember that half the island belonged to Spain, and so he allied his Haitian troops with Spain to fight against the French colonial power. When France emancipated the slaves of Haiti, their leader moved against Spain by joining in an alliance with France. The Haitians wrote a constitution and established a representative government, fought off the British, who were, as always, fighting the French. The Haitian army under Toussaint Louverture invaded Santo Domingo next door and freed all the slaves there in 1801. Generally, the Haitian Revolution is said to end in 1803, with the transfer of power from Louverture to Jean-Jacques Dessalines. This peaceful transfer of power from the revolutionary leader to a politician established a succession plan, and with his success, Haiti became a free republic, like the United States. It's a remarkable story, the Western world's most successful slave revolt that overturned white power and put people of color in charge as the majority in a representative system. Like the American Revolution, this was a colonial attempt at independence, and its members pursued legal avenues before they took up arms. Remember that delegation to the French National Assembly. There was a charismatic military leader and a succession to political leaders. However, the Haitian Revolution was also different from the American Revolution. It was a real social revolution. The local society was all overturned when people of color took charge. And unlike the American-British relationship after independence, the French required a payment to declare Haiti a free republic. This was needed if Haiti was to trade in the world as a free nation. France required that Haiti pay an indemnity to get the French to acknowledge their independence, and the payment was so large that Haitians were still paying it in 1938. That's 150 years of obligation. As a result of these terms of peace between Haiti and France, the island stayed poor. Most of its income went to pay France. Its recent natural disasters showed just how poor the island had become, paying off that debt for a century and a half. Crippled from the start, Haiti stayed a poor sugar island into the 20th century. Its successful slave revolt and social revolt were crippled from the start by its colonial origins. And the impact of the Haitian Revolution on Americans? Many refugees from the Haitian Revolution fled to American cities, especially New Orleans and Philadelphia. Former planters and free people of color both streamed into the American cities with tales of violence and overturning society. This cemented American fears about revolutions other than our own, especially where it was a real social revolution with racial divisions. Changing power relations have seemed violent and frightening to Americans, especially the slave-owning planters who feared a similar destiny. But the epidemic of American independence kept spreading, and the Spanish colonies were not immune to the contagion. In the decades after American independence, most Spanish colonies had similar experiences. In 1797, as this map shows, about 15 years after successful American independence, all these different Spanish colonies witnessed a revolt against Spanish power, each led by a charismatic leader. This map shows the details of how each of these former colonies separated from Spain or Portugal. And here, you can see the dates of independence for each of these post-colonial nations. These revolutions share important similarities to the North American experience. Each nation was a former colony of a European empire. Each had a representative government in one form or another. Each had a constitution and a legislature, and a process of making government that required compromise or violence within the local structure. But in the former Iberian colonies of Spain and Portugal, while their ideals were similar to those of the American Revolution, their American destinies were very different from those of the United States. All the American nations were post-colonial, but many of them stayed in a colonial relationship with Spain or Portugal. Remember the lesson on mercantilism. It was an economic ideology in which colonies existed to produce raw materials for the empire, and the empire would process and manufacture them, When Spain's colonies achieved political independence, they remained mostly exporters of raw materials. They still had silver mines. They still grew sugar. They exported these raw materials to the more developed world. They paid debts for their independence. This is an image of Africa in its post-colonial condition, but the same story applied to South American nations in the 19th century. They made raw materials and received industrial goods. They received capital investment. This means that Europeans bought bonds that financed railways, roads to bring the silver from the mines to the coast for export. European capital built roads to get the guano out. After independence, some of these South American nations developed a whole industry selling bird shit that was good fertilizer for American agriculture. You can't make this stuff up. The American South in the 19th century was itself considered by some to be a post-colonial economy. It grew cotton and tobacco for export to be manufactured elsewhere, the way South American countries still mine silver and also scraped guano for sale to richer countries. The similarities among these post-colonial nations has led to the modern economic world with its levels of development, the so-called developed world, the less developed world, and the developing countries now leading economic growth as they transition from mercantilist economies to industrial capitalist ones, places like India. These former colonies with less developed economies are sometimes referred to as the Global South, as they continue to make raw materials for export elsewhere. As they develop, they become industrial centers, producing goods for the rich world, for us, to buy in places like Walmart and the Apple Store. Some of the theories about how this came about are referred to as post-colonial dependency theory. And they originated among South American scholars, economists and political scientists who explored how the old world system of empire and exploration became the modern world system. These are phases in the history of capitalism, and the Age of Revolutions is an important transition. The American Revolution helped spark this modern world. But Europe was not exempt from the Age of Revolution that had begun with the US before reverberating across the Atlantic and back to the American colonies. I told you we'd get back to France as the 19th century turned. The chaos after the French Revolution gave birth to a leader. He had been a Revolutionary War hero and a military leader for France. In 1794, after the Terror, Napoleon had put down a royalist insurrection in Paris. In 1798, he invaded Egypt. By 1799, and the end of France's revolution, he was the first consul of France, and in 1804, he took the title Emperor. The next 10 years saw European power arrayed against him. The Napoleonic Wars saw France trying to expand across the continent, spreading the revolutionary disease, and European monarchs trying to stop it. Though Napoleon was finally defeated in 1815, the revolutionary spirit did not end there. I'm pushing the Age of Revolutions a little too far into the 19th century when I remark the endless uprisings put down in the 1830s and climaxing in 1848. In that year, a series of violent revolts in Europe began in France, where peasants pushed to the cities met artisans who had lost social status and economic power in the guilds. In Prussia, the causes were similar, and from Denmark through the Austro-Hungarian Empire, people rose up. Italy, Prussia, Austria, the German Confederation. Waves of unrest swept through European capitals. Some sought the right to vote, others more economic freedom. Even in Brazil, where the Praia revolt followed independence, the waves of revolution continued to reverberate. 6 decades later, the American Revolution was still spreading its contagion. Ideals of representative government and individual freedom were still inspiring people to speak for their rights. The Age of Revolutions was just the beginning.